It's my great honor and privilege to introduce our next speaker, the Congressman from the 6th District of Georgia, Dr. Tom Price. Dr. Price is an orthopedic surgeon. He served 4 terms in the State Senate of Georgia before being elected to Congress in 2004. In the last Congress, Congressman Price served as the chairman of the House Conservatives, the Republican Study Committee. And I must say that I believe with all my heart and soul that it was the House Conservatives standing up 100%, voting no on the stimulus bill, voting no 100% on the first Obama budget. He didn't even bother to submit another budget. He submitted it, they never passed it. But Tom Price was right there leading the charge. He now serves, he's been elected by his colleagues to be the chairman of the Republican Policy Committee, which develops conservative solutions to America's problems. Tom Price was doing health care before anyone had ever heard of Obamacare. His signature piece of legislation that he has introduced over and over and over is the Empowering Patients First Act, which is an attempt to solve our health care problems not through government solutions, but through private solutions, free market solutions. Tom Price was one of the leaders, you may remember, in 2009 when the Republicans refused to go home for the August recess because they stayed on the House floor and talked about energy when gasoline was at over $4 a gallon. Tom Price is a leader. He is a true conservative. He is a man of conviction, a man of faith, and I'm proud to call him my friend, Dr. Tom Price. Reach for the sky, baby, just spread your wings. Get higher.
Thank you. Thank you. How are all those conservative patriots out there? Thanks so much, Cleta. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out. I tell you, a year ago I had the privilege of addressing this great conference, and at that time, as some of you who were here will remember, you could just feel something was in the wind. You could feel the awakening of the American people to the onslaught on freedom and liberty that this administration had put into place. 1 year ago, I said to this very group, we are on the precipice of an historic political revolution, and that I was wholly confident that next year we will be at CPAC celebrating a conservative Republican majority in the House and the removal of Nancy Pelosi from power, and you did it. You know, in history, the story goes that at the close of the Constitutional Convention, Benjamin Franklin, who was one of the pivotal individuals in that, in 1787, he was leaving Convention Hall, having signed the Constitution, and he was approached by a woman who said, well, Dr. Franklin, what have you given us, a monarchy or a democracy? And as you well know, he said, we have given you a republic. And then those 5 famous words, if you can keep it, if you can keep it. And in that same vein, Daniel Webster said, hold on, my friends. Hold on, my friends, to the Constitution and to the republic for which it stands. For miracles do not cluster, and what has happened once in 6,000 years may never happen again. Hold on to the Constitution, for if the American Constitution should fail, there will be anarchy in the world. Now, why did those gentlemen give us those warnings? Well, I believe it's because they understood how precious liberty is and how fleeting liberty has been in the course of history, and what remarkable work it would take to preserve our freedom and our liberty. And this past election showed a remarkable amount of that eternal vigilance that is required to preserve our liberty. The numbers are absolutely astounding, as you well know, and you've probably talked about them. 87 new Republican members of the House of Representatives. 63 of those individuals turning Democrat districts to Republican districts, and 37 of those 87 never having served or run for office before in their lifetimes. They are so incredibly inspiring and passionate and patriotic. I tell you, it just does your heart good to serve with them. And much of that thanks goes absolutely to the folks in this room. So we come together now in the wake of a momentous election. Millions of Americans stood up and they demanded to be counted because they saw our nation moving in a direction that was in conflict with the fundamental American principles that we all cherish. Our liberty has been threatened by a government impressed with its own power, hungry for more authority, and blind to the failings of its policies. The deficits and the debt, the sluggish economic recovery, the disastrous Obamacare, the bailouts that politicize our economy, these are all symptoms of that arrogance in Washington that puts government first. Now, clearly, the policies and the trajectory of government over the past few years have been a mistake, but not because the Democrats meant to do something different and didn't succeed. No, these failed policies were no accident. These failed policies were their goal. But I'm here to tell you that their goal doesn't have to be our vision. Why? Why doesn't it have to be our vision? Because conservatism is alive and well. Because fundamental American principles are conservative principles. And the American people have been awakened, and they are more involved than ever. So where do we go from here? In short, your government and the leaders who espouse the virtues of conservatism need to walk the walk. We owe it to you, we owe it to those that we have the privilege to represent, and we owe it to future generations to get this moment in time right. We owe it to those inspirational leaders who have steered our movement with honor in past times of great challenge. This past Sunday, as all of you know, was the 100th anniversary of Ronald Reagan's birth. I had the privilege, the incredible privilege of being at the Reagan Library and the Museum just a few short weeks ago. What a giant of a man he was. Here was a man who taught us what positive leaders can do when they set about motivating a passionate and a patriotic American people into action. Here was a leader who walked the walk while communicating gracefully the virtues of principled solutions. Reagan proved that it is not enough just to identify the failings of big government or the moral imperative that we have to fight to preserve liberty and to pass on to our children and our grandchildren a nation stronger and more secure than the one we found. He knew that we had to win the moment by putting those beliefs to the test and to show skeptics what it means to have a government that gets out of the way and protects our inalienable rights to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness within constitutional boundaries. And for most of our country right now, that test begins with the economy and job creation. You know, President Obama has told the American people countless times, I've lost count, that his administration and his allies on Capitol Hill intend to focus on job creation. Now, that's folks focusing on job creation who have never created a job. No wonder we're in such a mess, huh? And the retreading and the rebranding of this administration that it's embarking on today is really remarkable, you know, using words like invest instead of spending and stimulus instead of taxing. And it won't change the same government-first philosophy that has compounded our challenges and threatened our nation. So it will fall to you as individual voices of conservatism, and it will fall to the House of Representatives, where a new Republican majority has the opportunity to move forward positive and optimistic solutions, even if we're met with a stiff arm by Harry Reid and the Senate Democrats or the President. Even in the face of their opposition, we will move an agenda that demonstrates to the American people you do not have to suffer a government that ignores your voices, bankrupts your future, and redistributes wealth. You do not have to abide a government that tells you to sit idly by because it has figured out how to dictate your education and your health care and your energy needs. And you know, their math simply doesn't add up. The deficits that we've seen over the past few years are truly jeopardizing the future of our nation. So what we need is a little honesty, a lot of hard work, and a resurgence of that wonderful American can-do spirit. Our job creators across this land don't need Washington to tell them where to invest or how to create jobs. What American small businesses and entrepreneurs need is greater certainty and stability that will only come when Washington stops trying to pick winners and losers and orchestrating our economy. Now, the current administration chooses to regulate and mandate because they don't trust you with your own money. Have you ever noticed that? You know, they think that the American people need Washington to tell them to invest here or to support this cause, or most recently, to eat this or to buy this light bulb. Meanwhile, they have no track record whatsoever that their policies actually work. And they have little faith, if any, in the American people or in our founding fathers' vision of free people acting in accordance with the law to build a brighter future. They want you to have faith that Washington will do that for you. But we know that it's not Washington that gives us our freedom. We know that our freedom comes from God Almighty. And that for an orderly society that preserves our rights, we cede a portion, just a portion of that freedom and our liberty back to our government, but only a portion. And I'm here to tell you that the government has taken too much. Now, don't get me wrong, it is not an easy task to balance freedom and security. It's a battle we've had since the beginning and the founding of our nation. But throwing money at the problem and building a larger and greater bureaucracy, though a favorite pastime of American politics, is a lazy brand of leadership, and its consequences are destructive to a healthy society. Never before in our history have we witnessed government encroach on our liberties in the way that it's done in recent years. Regulations and mandates and taxes have limited the freedom of Americans and the power of American free enterprise. Many people have lost their homes and their jobs and their security, and most tragically, some have even lost their faith in our country and in the American dream. Now, the Obama administration and the Democrats in Congress have fallen short on their promises, and they only have themselves to blame. They cry out for a stronger economy and then overtly build roadblocks to that success. Unfortunately, their failures are shared by our nation at large. We, however, are already working to rein in the size and the scope and the power and the cost of Washington. Republicans in the House of Representatives have only just begun to take action to put our nation's fiscal house in order, and yet the Democrats decry our efforts as unreasonable and extreme. I'll tell you what's unreasonable. It's the tragic debt that their big government has amassed in just a few short years. Government can certainly do with less. Now, Republicans have pledged to lead by listening and acting on behalf of and with the consent of the governed. There's something novel, huh? And that requires your active participation. We didn't get here without your help, and we will not be a success without your help. So it's time for some tough decisions. The circumstances demand that we be bold. If conservatives are timid, we will lose this battle, because you can rest assured that those who believe in a more active and an intrusive government will fiercely fight to increase and protect their power. So we have a long road ahead of us. But what our opponents fail to grasp is that our people and our spirit and our perseverance, it is that provide our shared prosperity and our stability, not our government. You know, Ronald Reagan said, "We believe faith and freedom must be our guiding stars, for they show us the truth, they make us brave, they give us hope, and they leave us wiser than we were." Those who possess that faith and freedom, you are a part of the bedrock upon which this nation has been made great, and part of the foundation upon which our nation will proudly stand and remain great. So we are blessed to live in this republic if we can keep it. And with your faith, with your support, and with your great work, I know that we will honor our founders' legacy and those who have defended it ever since. Thank you so much. God bless you. God bless America. And keep fighting for freedom.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Michelle Easton with the